Okay, the sound looks good. I'm making a video. I hadn't made one for a while. And just on the a side note, I can't talk. My computer's been acting weird the last week or so. It's been dying 4 or 5 times a day after we boot it up, and it takes forever. So I'm not even sure I'll be able to finish this video, but but maybe I will. So we'll see. So so this time of year, I always my attention always kind of ventures out in this direction. Is if you go look at the internet, let's see, let me go do that. Go here. You'll see lots of YouTube videos predicting the rapture and at Rosh Hashanah, which is sort of, I think it's 15th, starts the 15th. I like last 2 days, 15th, 16th, 17th, and that time frame. Some people go out to the 20th. And so there's a lot of rapture alerts and people saying it. Nowadays, you don't get many people making hard predictions. They think it's just alerts. It might happen now, but it might not. And that's prudent because usually they're wrong. But you can't use inductive reasoning to prove something that only is going to happen once when it doesn't happen. For instance, you can't say, well, I didn't die yesterday, I didn't die the day before, I didn't die but the day before, so I'm concluding I'll never die. Well, when you die, that's a one-time event. Now, you can't look at other people and say they died, so therefore maybe I will too. So you have to apply inductive reasoning properly. And even there, inductive reasoning is not as strong as deductive reasoning. They each have their weaknesses. I could get into that, But, and so, at any rate, people say, well, they've always wrong, they always will be wrong. That's not necessarily true. Well, on the other hand, chances are they're wrong this time. So I usually take the view of, oh, we'll see what happens. No predictions, one way or the other. I think it's other than just, well, based on probability of what happened in the past, it won't happen. But then again, but that'll be true when it does happen. So if it happens the way people think it is. So, and you get lots of various ways of interpreting the Bible. Here's one. It says, alert, green comet seen 430 years ago. Israel was in Egypt 430 years, a major rapture sign. And my view of that is like, maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to, say, no, that's not it. It's just as bad to say, yes, it is it. It's just like, okay, all right, it's just maybe it. So along those lines, I'm going to talk about something somewhat differently, Daniel's 70 weeks. And regardless of one's view of the rapture, it has to sort of mesh with Daniel's 70th weeks because it makes these predictions. And so, and I could spend a lot of time going through the different, reading this, and this video is going to be even longer than it is. Even my intro has been long. But I'm just going to leave that as an exercise of the reader. They could go read the prophecy. So I'm just going to kind of jump into this idea of the way it seems to me to be laid out. And this is after many years of studying it. That doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't even mean I think this is correct. It's because I don't know. It's more like this seems to me to fit the best of everything else. And there's pieces of this puzzle that don't fit. But I think that's true with every position. So anyway, so here's just my take on it. And so I'm kind of laying it out in a timeline, and you see lots of these timelines, and they all kind of look the same. This one's different. Now, that doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means it's different. So you have 70 years, and they're broken into 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 week. And most people think these weeks, 7 weeks means 7 years. So this would be 7 years. This would be 60. No, a week is 7 years. So 7 years would be 7 times 7, 49 years. 62 would be whatever 7 times 62 is. I can't do the math in my head. And 1 week would be 7 years. And that's where they get this. You'll hear, if you're into Bible prophecy, you'll inevitably come to this idea of this 7-year tribulation. I think this is the 7-year tribulation. And I've pointed this out in countless YouTube videos before, all of them deleted now. But no, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just says 1 week. It doesn't even say it's the 70th week, but one can kind of infer it's the 70th week. So how do I approach this in a way that I'm just another YouTuber adding one more crazy theory out there? Well, it may be it's first of all, it's not a theory. It's just an analysis. A theory, you kind of propose, and I'm not going to get into the difference there. It's just this analysis based on certain criteria. My criteria is simple. Don't add, don't subtract. So I look at it as like everyone's heard about connecting the dots. So I'm thinking when you read something in the Bible, those are the dots. For instance, it says, then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. That's a dot. Now, it's just stated there. Now, when you relate it to say where it is in a timeline, you're connecting the dots. That's kind of like drawing a line between the dots. And so you kind of have to connect the dots, but you don't have to add dots. So, and for instance, when you say this 1 week is the Great Tribulation, you just added the dot because there is no passage in the Bible that talks about the Great Tribulation or the 7-year tribulation. That's a dot that's been added. You might say this 1 week is the same as, well, I don't even know anything that talks about 7 years right off the top of my head. There's a lot of things that talk about, half of the 7 years, which would be 3.5 years. I mean, there's a bunch of verses here. If I'll go down and show them here. It says, the lawless one will be revealed. It comes here. No, okay, I haven't put that in there yet. It's up here. Let me go up here. It's slow. And I'm sorry about this. So let me go here. This one's kind of hard to view. One chart. So here's this second half of the week, post midweek. I even call it. And so you go down here, and here's all these verses about. Oh, here it is. Here's this times and a half, 1260 days. Those are roughly 3.5 years. So you see a lot. So these are dots. And when I line them up together and saying all these look like they're talking about the same period of time, I'm connecting the dots. I'm not adding dots. Here's a dot, there's a dot, there's a dot, there's a dot. There might be several dots in these, but let me just call it a dot. There's a dot. When I line them up and saying, oh, these seem to all be talking about the same thing, I'm not adding any dots. I'm just connecting the dots. You kind of say, here's a dot, and here's another dot. And so when you connect the dots, you're not adding a new dot, you're adding a line. You're saying, oh, this dot and this dot seem to be talking about the same thing. Or they're not talking about the same thing, they come after the other. So that's connecting the dots. You draw a line. And you sort of have to draw a line. Jesus did that. He would tell a parable, and then he'd say what the parable means. So he'd say, these are the seed that fell on the pavement and the birds ate. And then he would talk about, add another dot, what that is, and then you'd connect the dots. So you have to connect the dots, but you don't have to add dots. So there is no dot that says, let me go back to my other chart here. Where is it? think there it is. So there's no dot that says, let me go back up here. This is not going to be a good video. Most of my videos aren't very good. I just kind of hack them out. So there is no dot that says 7-year tribulation. That's a dot that people have added. Now, maybe it's right. I'm not saying it's not right, but I'm just saying it's something they added. And that's what, Revelation says, don't add, don't subtract. So, but there are, by implication, a first half and a second half, because it talks about the middle of the 7th week. So if something has a middle, it has the time prior to the middle and the time prior after the middle. So you have, and if middle maybe doesn't mean exactly middle, but it's close to being exact. So I'm calling this the first half and second half. So I haven't really added a dot here, because that, when you put the middle in there, that implies, that's, linguists call that, I forget what they call it, it'll come to me, not implication, I forget the word, but my memory's so bad. So these are implied. So you have to add those. I mean, it's just, when you divide something in half, there's two halves. It's just by definition. So, at any rate, so getting to this, and so the big question is, most people say the start of this, they argue about what it is, but it's something to do with rebuilding, the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem after the 70-year exile. And then there's a debate on what happens at the end of that 7 weeks, 49 years. And then there's a big debate that comes here, and then there's a big debate about when this is. Is it the future or is it the past? And so, and I'm not going to go through all those. I could, but this video will be a lot longer. So, but one of the tricky parts is, it says, this verse says, after the 62 weeks. So, there, where is that, the verse? Somewhere it's there. I don't know where it is. But if you read it, you'll see this. After the 62 weeks, these things happen. And some people think that after means immediately after. But after is open-ended. In other words, there's a start after. There's your before, and then you hit this point, and then everything after is after it. But 1,000 years later, it's still after it. We're after the Civil War. We're after, the Civil War was a long time ago. We're after World War II. It's not immediately after. So after is open-ended. So I draw this arrow. And then it talks at the end about it's finished. At the end of the 7th weeks, to finish transgression, to bring an end, everlasting righteousness, to seal up prophecy, to know it most holy place, to end sin. And so that sounds pretty final. So that's one of the problems. There's two popular views out there, and neither one of them end here. One of them puts 1,000-year millennium after this point. So, which at the end, we see that there's a rebellion, so it doesn't end sin, so that's a problem. The other one says this week ended pretty much 2,000 years ago, give or take a little bit, probably give up. And that this, so in my view, what's unique about it is this is the end. After this is eternity, whatever that is. Eternity's here and there's no more. So how do I come up with this, since these things happened 2,000 years ago, thereabouts? And so there's this idea of a gap. There's a gap. There's a gap. Either some people would put it here between the 62 weeks and the 1 week, and there's a gap here, and they call it the gap. Then the other view is this ended, and there's not so much a gap. It's just there's a long period with nothing's. This Daniel's. This happened. This maybe this takes 2,000 years to all play out, but Daniel's weeks ends here, and it ended back. Now, this view puts. See, okay. One view says this is the crucifixion, because it says he was cut off and had nothing here. Man, this is okay. I'm going to end this video. This is just too complicated to cover in one video. Maybe I won't end. Yeah, I hate making such. Even I'm going to end to stop the video.